Welcome to Chronic Boss Unfiltered. Today, I'm sitting down with Lauren Perna. She is the founder of Lauren Perna Communications and the Mentally Fit founder. She's a storyteller and somebody who has been incredibly open about her journey with mental health, sobriety, and building a business on her own terms. Lauren has been with me since day one in helping to build Chronic Boss. She is our chief community officer, and I just can't wait for all of you who don't already know Lauren to get to know her because I know you will adore her as much as I do. Lauren, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
I know we're finally had Lauren on at the end of last year to interview me. So we got like some snippets of her story, but now it's really Lauren's turn to be in the hot seat and we can get all the juicy details. So
Oh yeah.
Lauren,
Bring it
love
on.
it. Excited. Who knows what we're going to talk about? Lauren and I chat all the time. She has been victim to my very long voice notes. So bless her for always listening to those and being so supportive and responding. So Lauren, jump in. Give us your Chronic Boss elevator pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Lauren. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Lilly, so much for having me on the show. I am a multi-entrepreneur. I have a couple of businesses and I live with anxiety and depression. And I have learned how to use those illnesses to my advantage, using my anxiety as a strength in my business to be accountable, responsible, and reactive to my clients. And then using my depression as a way to have empathy for people and build communities around other people that are struggling just like me.
You've really captured, without me even asking our classic Chronic Boss Secret Sauce question, you just answered it.
Good.
It's how your
Yeah.
chronic conditions have really had a positive impact on your work and how you're leveraging them to be successful in your business. I will circle back to that because I want to dig
Yeah.
deeper on those. But I want to hear first, tell me more about starting your business. What was the catalyst for starting your first one, Lauren Perna Communications?
Yeah, so I think I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur as long as I, was little. I come from a long family of entrepreneurs. So I think that when the time came, I was kind of in between jobs and trying to figure it out. In my mind, I thought, all right, I just need one more big girl job, one more kind of marketing communications job that can really set me on the path to do my own thing. Well, COVID happened. So, that world didn't come to fruition. And I was faced with a world where I was like, you know what? I think I just have to do it. Sometimes the universe just pushes you in that direction. And that's exactly what happened. And it's funny because in the beginning, I was still trying to get my footing and figure out what I wanted. And I come from the life science world. And I thought maybe this is an opportunity to stray and try something else. Well, the first 6 months was kind of, that chaos and excitement. And I realized science is absolutely where I belong, telling stories of companies that are working on drugs and medicines. That's really my strength. So once I kind of narrowed down on that, that's really where I feel like LPC took off. And I've been doing it ever since, coming up on 6 years in June, which is so exciting. So yeah, I feel like it was kind of just the universe's way of putting in front of me what I needed, even if I didn't think I did.
Yes. And Lauren and I have been building side by side, not just Chronic Boss, but our agencies in the same industry, life sciences. We shared on the last episode Lauren was on. We both met when we worked at Mass Bio, which is a trade association for the biotech and pharma companies in the Boston area, Massachusetts area. And we both started in 2020.
Oh,
Pandemic
so
hit,
funny.
craziness, and both on our 6th year, and we've really built together, which has been awesome. And we've talked about really the trials and tribulations. There's so much amazingness that comes with being your own boss and running an agency and having that agency over your own life. But we also talk about the challenges. But right before Lauren and I hit record, we were talking about
Like literally,
okay,
yeah.
how's the business going? What's happening? Like, we were talking and you were like, I feel like I just got out of a rut. And I had been in a rut a couple months
Yeah.
ago, feeling stress about, okay, when's the next deal coming in? And this client project is over. So how are we going to get the next one? And so just managing all of that, like, tell me more about where you feel like you love being in the business, and then other parts that have been challenging about being your own business owner?
I know. It's funny because it is definitely not for the faint of heart. And I think when I was trying to decide what to do, part of me was worried that I didn't have the wherewithal, that I was too much of an anxious person, or I did deal with too many bouts of depression to be able to, continue business. And it's funny, those very things are kind of, like I said, what makes me a little bit stronger in my business. But I think, first of all, you gotta have a community around you. I'm just not sure I really would be as successful as I am if I hadn't realized that so early on. Like, I leaned into local and national communities very early on. I found a business coach early on, and I really do feel like that's what kept me sane and on track during those kind of beginning parts. And once you kind of realize the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, it's much easier to push through the downs. A couple months ago when I was feeling in a rut, there was really kind of no part of me that was like, all right, Lauren, maybe you got to phone it in. Maybe it's over. I just knew, like, all right, it's a slow time. I got to figure things out. But it's, for every slow time, there's super crazy, overwhelming with clients and activities and whatnot. So it's kind of going into every year and day and knowing that something could be tossed your way that is great. Something could be tossed your way that is not as great, but you will get through it and you can lean on your community. And the cool thing about entrepreneurship is, unlike working for someone, when I am going through a tough time, I can take that time back. I can take some time off to realign and refigure myself out. That's the joy of working for yourself, is having that ability to do that. I don't even know if that answered the question.
Well, you did. And I mean, you're sharing the feelings, and it's the waves. We're riding the waves of
Yeah,
entrepreneurship,
exactly.
it's hard. It's really
Hmm.
hard. And there are some times where I ride the waves better than others.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you got to go with it. And so I would love to know from you, because you're really great you talked about community, right? And that is such an important tool as an entrepreneur, especially as a solopreneur, someone with a small team, to have other entrepreneurs to lean on. You've been brilliant with that. You're also really amazing at networking and attending events and building that community and building those circles. So something that's come up that we've done in our Chronic Boss masterminds and that we've talked about often is, how do you know what events to go to? What's worth your time? How do you networking can get out of control in terms of
Yes,
like
it
how much
can.
time you're spending on it, right? How are you strategic to make sure that you are making the most of your time when you are out there building your community and networking?
Oh God, I know. I feel like anytime you go to a networking event, it's like, you're rolling the dice. Like, was this worth my time? I quickly realized that my referral network is from going to events. Some people get referrals from other businesses. Some people get referrals through like lead magnets. For me, it's me, and I try and map it out. So maybe I do 2 in-person seminars, breakfasts, brunches, whatever they are, a month. So it's really mapping it out for sure, and knowing which types of events are going to have the people that you want to meet. Networking is great, but I found I'm at my best when there's content, when I can listen, when I have something to react to. I don't mind open networking, but I just feel more confident myself when there's kind of like a background topic. So just knowing that, that's how I pick my events. And that's what I encourage people to do too, is really like know where you're strongest, know where you're going to be on and comfortable, and don't overcommit. What happens is, you commit to all these events, and the best one is the last of the week, and by then you're exhausted. So, it's
Right.
a little bit of trial and error for sure.
It's a great point, and making sure, yeah, that you don't overcommit, because then you're burning yourself out and you're wasting your time when you also
Exactly.
need to be working, right? There's that balance. And so what you do a great job of too, what you brought up, going to events with content. And I always like to share this with folks who feel like they go to events and they said, well, I didn't meet anyone, so that was a waste of my time.
Right, right.
When you go to an event with content, and you do a great job with this, putting a recap post on LinkedIn, sharing some photos from that
Yep,
event that, hey, I was here. It just shows, hey, I'm a leader in this space. I'm on the scene. I'm
exactly.
chatting it up. Here are my insights and takeaways. That's a great
Exactly.
way to have yourself out there and making sure that you're still getting some value out of the event, even if maybe you didn't meet your next client or lead.
Oh my gosh, that is like actually the number one thing that I think has moved the needle for me is just taking a few photos and posting it online, especially if you're tagging the speakers, if that's okay with them, or tagging people you saw there. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. So one other thing I want to touch on while we're on the topic of agency life and running your own business, because we have a lot to talk about today. Before I
Yes.
move into our next topic, there's something that you and I have been talking about a lot lately,
Yeah.
and it has also come up in our masterminds. And I really want us to address it today because I think it's so important for our audience to hear. We are hit all the time from all angles on social media and with the women that we surround ourselves with, which is great that we're hit with this idea to like, we want to grow. We want to make a lot of money. We want to make a big impact. We want to do all the things. And I feel like I'm constantly drowning in this narrative of I need to scale. I need to grow. I need to be doing more. I need to be more visible. And I feel like I've taken a step back and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming me. And, I
Hmm.
need to remember that, yes, I have my agency, Patient Authentic. I bring in contractors who help me. We have a team, but I don't have a big full-time team. I don't have 20 or 30 or 100 people who are working under me. And honestly, I don't want that. I love doing the work. I love working with my team members who step in. They're individual contributors. They're
Exactly.
amazing. And I am happy with where I am financially,
Yeah.
but then on the other side, I hear these stories and narratives of people who go bigger and they make more
Yeah.
and they make a bigger impact. And I'm drawn to that. But then when I take a step back and I actually think about what I want, I'm really happy with the balance I have. And so I want to hear from your perspective because I think
Yeah.
you've had some similar thoughts on this lately. And I want us getting this narrative out there because I just feel like all of us as entrepreneurs are surrounded by that push, 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 go, 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 go.
It's so true. And I don't think I quite realized that that was not a narrative you had to follow until I was like deep into it. Because, yeah, that's the truth. If you go on Instagram and LinkedIn or you're just in groups, the narrative is scale, grow. And that's why we started businesses, was because we didn't want to follow the straight and narrow path of corporate life. So why would we let other people's kind of opinions of what entrepreneurship is impact us today? And I think that it's important we kind of stick to our reasons. And for me, my guiding light, the reason I started the business, other than, knowing that I wanted to work for myself, was I really just wanted to be able to spend more time with my family. If I had an agency, a larger agency, if I had more people living under me, that's not going to happen. Yes, I would have more money, but what good is that if my entire goal was to build a business that's nervous system friendly? I am already a person that, takes things to heart. When I go all in, I go all in. So I think having a large agency would just kind of defeat the whole purpose of why I started my business. I always want people to remember is like, you got to do what's best for you. And if that doesn't match the narrative on LinkedIn or with other people in your networking groups, that's okay. You can find people that are just like you. And that's why I'm so grateful to have Lilly, and I have some other business friends that are both, we're all just in that, like, yeah, we like having a boutique level agency. We don't need to have, a million people under us. I just need to be able to sustain my life. And that's what I'm happy with.
Lauren, so beautifully said. I'm so glad we're talking about this because there isn't enough of this out there. And I do
There's
think
not.
it's a real chronic boss mindset. And the thing is, we also are ambitious. So there are parts of us that are pulled towards that. It's sexy to us
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
build and to grow and to have a bigger impact and to make more money. That's always going to be there. And who knows? Maybe there's going to be a point in our lives where we say, hey, I want to go a little bit bigger. I want to try this new thing. And that's okay. But it's honoring that it's also totally okay okay, to your point, let's, using the agency world as an example, we're staying boutique level because
Yeah.
now you get to go up to New Hampshire and ski, and I get to have space and time to plan my wedding and look for a house and
Yeah.
just be present through all of that instead of like running around and working every second and through the weekends to try to ensure that I'm meeting the demand of my clients. So I
Exactly.
just think it's important. I'm so glad we had this conversation.
One more thing that I want to say too that I just realized, the other big reason that I do not want to own an agency, a large agency, is I do not like being a boss. And that is something that I wanted to say because I feel like a lot of people, women like us, millennials that are people pleasers, and I don't want to be a boss. I like just having like contractors that I can lean on as I need to. So I think that is something that I want people to remember too, is like, just because the opportunity is there doesn't mean it's right for you. And if you do not like being a boss, that's inevitable with growing. So just wanted to throw that little part out there too.
Ooh, Lauren, I'm so glad you said that because it's so true. I'm in the same boat. I love having my contractors and I like being a mentor, but I don't enjoy being a boss either. I also realize that it's a lot of extra work and it's a lot of pressure on
So much
you.
pressure. It's
So much pressure and
someone's
ownership.
life, someone's livelihood is in your hands. I don't want that pressure.
Too much. We
Yeah.
don't need the mental burden that comes with that.
No,
So, and that's
exactly.
okay. But you don't hear that a lot. So I'm really glad, Lauren, that you said that. It's so true. We're breaking all the stereotypes here on Chronic Boss. I love
Exactly.
it. I love
Exactly.
it. All right.
All right, next
So
time.
next, yeah. So let's dig a little bit more into mental health. I want to talk about that moment for you when you realized that mental health is a chronic condition. Because
Yeah.
you were previously treating your mental health conditions, you wrote about this on the Chronic Boss Hub, as a back burner condition, you said,
Yep.
and maybe not equal to physical health. So tell me a little bit about that transition mentally for you and how that shifted.
Yeah, it's so funny because that transition was even after I had launched Mentally Fit Founder and kind of gone public with my story and stuff like that. Like I had been on like NAMI's website and McLean Hospital's website. Like I had gone pretty big with this, and still, even as a representative of mental health in this world, I still subconsciously, maybe overtly, treated it like a back burner condition. And what I mean by that is like, I could still live my life. You wouldn't know that I had mental health conditions. So it's not as important as someone that has cancer or, a neurodegenerative disorder. In my mind, it was really just this kind of secondary condition until Lilly and I met for lunch one day a couple of years ago. And she was telling me the, beginning seedlings of Chronic Boss Collective. And I was so excited. And at that point, I had launched Mentally Fit Founder. I wasn't really sure what kind of road I wanted to take it down. So Mentally Fit Founder was really just this brand that I created for my personal brand to have a platform. And slowly, as it was building, people kept saying, like, oh my God, I love what you're doing. Like, you should start a community. Hearing that from her and then meeting other people through Chronic Boss and realizing, how much mental health impacts them, I realized that I wasn't alone. And I think that's ultimately, the power of things like social media and sharing your story is figuring out you're not alone and really giving some teeth to your condition. Because I think had I not met a community, had I not shared my story, I still would have just been treating mental health as that back burner condition. But by hearing from people, getting the comments on my posts and the private messages, and then meeting people in Chronic Boss, I began to realize, oh, wow, this is like, this isn't a back burner condition. It's not like I got hangnail or something. Like, and I feel like I was treating it like that in my head. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's powerful to think about it that way because it is, to your point, it's chronic. You are living with it every day, and mental health is health.
Yep,
Mental health is health.
exactly.
So, Lauren, you talked about how you started to share and you've been very public about living with mental health conditions as an entrepreneur. And I think you've grown in that and shared even more over the past couple of
Yeah,
years. What has the response been like when you share? And how do
I
you
know.
decide what parts of your journey you're sharing versus what you're not sharing?
Yeah, and this is like such a topic that comes up, especially LinkedIn and personal branding is really on the up and up. But I think the biggest pushback I get when it comes to personal branding and sharing your story is like, how much? Where do I draw the line? What do I decide? But I think my answer is always you have to do what you feel comfortable with to start. That's kind of the non-starter. If you don't feel like talking about anything publicly, then don't, because otherwise it's going to come across as inauthentic. And the whole entire point of, personal branding is being an authentic person. That's, kind of the barrier is like just wanting to and feeling empowered to. And then I think, the same thing goes for deciding how much to share. You really start off where you feel comfortable, and just like any other evolution of life, your story is going to evolve and you're going to feel more comfortable. Or maybe there's things you want to pull back and it doesn't feel as aligned with where your story's at now. So I think knowing it's a process, and it's also probably a little bit about like seeing where the comments are, seeing what people are reacting to. For me, I took the next step in sharing my journey when a reporter had asked me like a specific question. And I was like, oh, I really haven't talked about that. And then I kind of, I had a moment where I was like, all right, I could tell her I don't want to say, I don't want to talk about that. Or I could just answer and see how it goes. Yeah, I answered and people resonated with that story. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm up for sharing about that.
Can you tell us what that
Yeah.
was, Lauren?
Oh, sure. Yeah, no. So when was it Healthline interviewed us?
Yes, Healthline
Yes.
interviewed some of the members of Chronic Boss. Yeah.
Yeah, she was very specific because she really wanted kind of specific examples of like how does your disease or your condition manifest in certain places. So for me, I was talking about how entrepreneurship became the best thing because working in a corporate environment was very stressful for me. I felt like I had to walk in every day with this mask on, not talk about my mental health conditions, really just had to like put on a brave face. Even when I got super anxious, I felt like I was not doing the right thing, like I was being a bad employee. So she wants to know, what does that look like? Like, what's your behavior when you are getting anxious at your work desk? And I was like, I guess. So I just, took a breath and I was like, all right, yeah, I guess, like face turns red, I'm crying. And that's just kind of an embarrassing thing to talk about.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? I guess if I share it, maybe somebody else will feel better about crying at their desk too. I think that it just goes to show I was put in circumstances that weren't ideal to me. And now I'm here. I'm at my desk. I feel great because I created a situation that works better for me. And that was ultimately the point of the story, was showing like this evolution of like you can, create a story that works for you. Yeah. So now I talk about really, nothing's held back in that story, of why I decided to become an entrepreneur and, what life was like. But I tried to keep things broad at first, and that's just natural.
You sharing though and getting into those specifics, that's clearly it's resonating with people, it's helping people. And that's what I always go back to when I'm sharing my story. And it doesn't mean that you have to share, to your point, you don't have to share every little bit. You don't owe anyone
Yeah.
that. You make
No,
the decision about what you share, but there are certain things when you get vulnerable, it can make a real impact. When the first time
exactly.
I shared my mental health journey, because I'm very known for talking about my autoimmune diseases, but I've also battled mental health since before I was even diagnosed with autoimmune conditions. I live with OCD and anxiety. And I remember when I did a post for Mental Health Awareness Month a few years ago on LinkedIn, it really blew up, me sharing
Yeah.
my story. And I will never forget that there was a colleague of mine who DM'd me on LinkedIn a couple of months later and said, hey, I just wanted to send you a note to say thank you so much for sharing your story. And I had actually shared the platform that was using the platform Alma to find a therapist. And she used that platform to find a therapist, and she's
Oh,
now in therapy, and it has really made a big difference for her. And so
yeah,
that has stuck with me now for a few years. And just knowing that you have this power to make the impact. And there are so many of us, there are so many of us living with a chronic condition and who are going through this. And us
yeah.
elevating and sharing our stories or anything that you're going through that may be vulnerable, it makes all of us more human and it connects all of us more deeply. And that's really powerful.
Exactly. And I think I always try and think back to like, is sharing this part of my story? Is it going to make an impact? Is it, is my guiding light of mentally fit founder? Is this part of that? I think in my most recent Chronic Boss article is really this concept of where does the private, personal boundary settle, especially when you're going through something. And I think that's kind of this phase two of becoming, a storyteller about your chronic condition is figuring out, do you keep your audience abreast when you are in a flare, or do you, power through and, or just, go silent on social media and then let them know where you were. If you're going through a bout of depression, you keep the schedule of content that you already had, and then later on, go back and say what's been going on. Because I think that's probably a question a lot of people have, because it's like, oh, I don't want to be disingenuous, but also I'm like going through this very real thing and I'm not ready to share it. And again, that just all goes back to like, you have to do what you feel most comfortable with. And like you said, Lily, you don't owe anybody anything. If you're going through something and you're not ready to share it, like, that's fine. You don't share it. You can always kind of explain things later. And that's, I think we both just went through something similar with that. But you don't owe anybody anything. And I think that's the most important thing to remember when it comes to your personal story and then your kind of public story that you're sharing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Lauren, another topic that I wanted to be sure that we covered, which is such a hot topic right now, it has increasingly gotten more and more popular, is sobriety and your decision to go sober. I'd love to hear from you. What led you to this decision and how has it impacted your mental health?
My goodness. I know. It will be 4 years in a few weeks.
Wow,
Yep.
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. No, it's the topic I love talking about because my husband and I joke like when we met, we were such partiers. We met at a bar, and now neither of us drinks. It's if it's possible for us, it's really, it's possible for anybody. And I'm coming at this from the lens of, I do not have a substance use problem. It really was alcohol, and I just didn't mesh. I didn't drink every day, but when I did drink, it was just the aftermath was not worth it. I would feel anxiety, that kind of like anxious, kind of like undetermined anxiety immediately after, the next day. And John would always say that he would notice my like mood, would be like just sliding down. He could just always tell. One day I was having a great time at a bachelorette party, and a girl that I knew got an OUI, and I like had to go pick her up after the next day. And I was just kind of like, what am I doing? Like, how is this like even me? And at that point, my business I was a couple years into the business, and being hungover or the anxiety really impacts your day to day. When you work for yourself, that's a big impact. Initially, I just kind of was like, I don't think drinking is for me. I'm being surrounded by situations that just don't even make any sense. Like, It's like, I'm the type of person that I kind of knew, like, as soon as I stopped, I kind of knew, like, all right, I'm probably never going to drink again because I felt so good. Like, I just felt amazing. My mental health was so much better. My business was stronger. And then I influenced my best friend Kathy to do it, and John, my husband, did it. And I feel like we started a trend because now there's so many NA drinks, there's so much sobriety around. So it's, yeah, it feels good to be in a world where alcohol is not the number one priority.
Yeah, it really has shifted in the past few years. You are right. I do think you started a trend. I do want to know for you, and I know it is getting better in terms of there's more NA drinks out there, but alcohol really is still so embedded in professional culture, right?
Crazy.
Networking events, client dinners, drinks after work. And I always had this mentality of, oh my God, business deals are made at the bar. And I do feel like I would often be drinking and it would bring me closer to these people, right? Because they're letting their guard down. They're ready, but I'm
Yeah,
also letting my
totally.
guard down. And I already say what I think without drinks. So add drinks to the mix.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Ex-
It's probably too unfiltered. We're Chronic Boss Unfiltered. I probably go a step further. What has that experience been like, and has it been challenging to navigate professionally, and how have you navigated it?
Yeah, honestly, I have to tell you that the first like 2, 3, 4 months were awful. So if you're considering this and you've stopped and started because it was awful, it's awful, but just go. Keep going. It will get better, I promise. And it wasn't just professional, it was, personal relationship. But I have to say that it was a little bit more in my head than I realized. Like I think that we're just so used to a culture where drinks, yeah, are just, part of the scenery. It's not even like thought of. In the professional world, I think once I stopped being in my head so much about it, it wasn't as big of a deal. I think it's just knowing that you're there to network, you're there to put yourself out there, and the drink has absolutely nothing to do with it, whether you're drinking or not. And the deals are still going to be made whether you have the drink or not. And if the deal is made only under the auspice of having a drink, then it's probably not going to be a great deal. Who knows what's going to happen? So just knowing that you can take those conversations to Zoom or over coffee instead. But I think the tide is shifting very much so.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. And I used to, anytime I would go to a networking event, I'd grab a drink, have a drink in my hand. And now I just don't. I actually just went to one
Same.
the other week and I grabbed a water. I said, it's a Tuesday night. I don't feel like drinking.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I've actually really reduced my own, while I'm not sober, I have reduced my intake just because I have the same thing where I'm getting anxiety and I don't like not feeling good the next day. I just
Exactly.
don't enjoy it. That I do love the taste of wine. So I am really waiting. If anyone's listening, I'm really waiting for you to come out with non-alcoholic wine that actually tastes good. Maybe that'll have to be my next business.
I know we could do it together, the Chronic Boss booze.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that, there definitely are some wines that are better than others. John and I were at Moxie in the Seaport the other
Yeah.
night, and they had a sparkling wine that was really good. Like, we couldn't even tell the
Was it the
difference.
Kylie Minogue one?
No, which I thought it was going to be, but it was something else. It was cute, came in a little bottle. And it came in a little bottle, and it was like it was like one glass, but it was actually like two each bottle. So it was perfect.
The Kylie Minogue one's good. I think they've sparkling champagne and wine is better, but like I love a Sancerre and a rosé, and I'm waiting for a true flat, delicious wine. So I've thought
Yeah.
about this a lot. Maybe this is my next calling. We'll see.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you heard it here first.
Yeah. No, it's good.
I love it. Well, so Lauren, you've educated us on so much today around everything from building an agency and honoring what is best for you in your life, looking at mental health as a chronic condition and navigating your mental health, doing what's best for you, going sober to support your mental health. There's been so much wisdom in everything that you've shared today. And as we look to wrap up here, I'd love to know from you, what does being a chronic boss mean to you?
Oh, it means community, power, and self-awareness. Finding the chronic boss, finding the community. You found the community. Finding the people. I think just gave me a sense of empowerment that I am not alone, that I have something to offer people, and that this kind of old way of thinking of like, leave your problems at the door, sweep it under the rug is just not how the majority of people work. And it's not how women work, especially. And I think it just, to me, this community, finding these people, being a part of something bigger than myself has just meant so much to my confidence and, like I said, my self-awareness. And I feel like, I just go into things with so much more power than I did before. So
Power. I
I love it.
love that.
Yeah.
It's power. So,
Yeah.
Lauren, tell us, where can people find you, and tell us about the special event you have coming up for Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So you can find me on LinkedIn. That's my biggest spot. It's just search for Lauren Perna. It's backsplash is Lauren Elizabeth Perna. And I'm also on Substack, which is new. So I'm excited about that. Definitely follow me. Look for me on Substack, Mentally Fit Founder. My personal website is mentallyfitfounder.com. So any of those places, it's all connected. I post about everything all the time. You can find me on Instagram. I'm not really great about it. So, but still, give me a follow. However, what I am so excited about is I am doing my very first Mentally Fit Founder event. So if it goes well, maybe this is my future of Mentally Fit Founder. It's in person. If you are local to Boston, it is in Dedham. And we are doing kind of like a little salon style, intimate kind of dinner where we are talking about this topic that has come up on this podcast a lot, is that kind of balance between your personal and your private life as a founder. Because in today's world, being a founder means putting so much of yourself out there. And what does that look like for founders? How much do you share? What are the consequences? How do you know how to craft your story? So that is on May 14th from 6:30 to 8:30 or 6 to 8:30. You can find it on my website under events. Super excited. We only have 25 spots, but I knew this would be an audience that would want to know a little bit more about it. So I would love to see you guys there. Shoot me a note if you have any questions. My email is lauren@laurenperna.com. I'm sure all the socials will be here. But yeah, if that event sounds great and you don't live in Boston, still do let me know, because I think this could be the next iteration of Mentally Fit Founder.
Amazing. Thank you, Lauren. We will put all of that in the show notes so that folks can grab the links. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for
Thank
sharing
you.
your insights and wisdom, and for all your support of the Chronic Boss community. It was an honor to have you on, and look
Thank
forward to
you.
chatting again soon.
Thanks, guys.